Hey everybody, how you doing? It's RMJ Movie Reviews Incorporated. This one is not a movie review, just like the last one wasn't. But what I wanted to talk about, I'll be coming up with a movie review probably tomorrow or something like that. I'm kind of molding closer and closer to what I want to do here. So these rinky-dink Christmas lights behind me and my video collection here is kind of my idea of a set. So like I said, I'm getting there. There's going to be different technology used to film the show, but I'm moving ahead. Um, Today, what I want to talk about is I've heard news that they're going to make a Beverly Hills Cop 4. That Eddie Murphy has finally decided to dust off his I can't remember, was it Detroit Lions jacket and his big gigantic 1980s sunglasses and his kind of laugh and bring back Axel Foley. I think that's spectacular. One of the reasons I think it's spectacular is because coincidentally, just the other day, I own Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2 on DVD. They had them in the bargain bin at a Walmart over by my house. They clearanced them out when they closed the store. And so I bought them. They were really cheap. And upon rewatching the film, I hadn't seen it in a very long time. Let's get one thing flat out. Beverly Hills Cop is not a good movie. And everybody knows that. It's what makes it great is because of two things. Eddie Murphy and his kind of on the fly kind of improvisational kind of comedy, and the very, very lovely, extraordinarily cheesy 80s aesthetic to that film. So, you've got a lot of kind of the musical montages with Patti LaBelle in the background, which the Patti LaBelle song is priceless. And then who can forget the Pointer Sisters, because I remember my mother used to listen to the Pointer Sisters quite a bit when I was a child. So I used to hear I'm So Excited like all the time. I'm So Excited and Jump. I would hear like all the time in my house growing up when I was a little kid. It's not a good film, but it's carried on Eddie's charisma and the supporting cast like John Ashton, Judge Reinhold, Ronnie Cox, and Bronson Pinchot, who was on that TV show Perfect Strangers in the '80s. He shows up for kind of a funny little role in an art shop, and I can't remember the actress's name who's supposed to be his best friend in the picture, but they all do a good job. That's why Beverly Hills Cop is remembered, because of Eddie Murphy's comedy and his charisma. Him and the '80s aesthetic and the supporting cast is what make that film. The script does not. We move on to Beverly Hills Cop 2. Beverly Hills Cop 2, I never was particularly a fan of. I very much like the first Cop because Eddie's very funny in it. In my opinion, I don't particularly think that. And this is my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, whatever. I didn't particularly think Eddie was that funny in the second one. I kind of more than anything felt his character was kind of obnoxious. There was some things in it that were funny to me, but I just didn't enjoy Cop 2. I mean, Cop 2, Tony Scott directed it, so it has that kind of that Top Gun, True Romance, Last Boy Scout, Days of Thunder kind of look, where you've got like kind of the color correction on the screen, where it's kind of, it gives it like that kind of tropical kind of look, where it's like kind of dark at the top and the bottom of the screen, and there's a lot of oranges and hot colors and all that, and the action is better, and you do have Sylvester Stallone's ex-wife Brigitte Nielsen, and I'm sure she got that role in the film because of her talent. um, and she plays a tall blonde bank robbing blonde, and her husband, who's the creepy actor from The Seventh Sign with Demi Moore. I forget his name, but this guy's been like in everything. He was in The Replacement Killers, tons and tons of other horror pictures and action pictures or whatever. He plays bad guys all the time. But Cop 2, I just felt Cop 2 was very, very glossy, and the production values were higher, and you had Tony Scott and Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson, which they produced the first one as well. I just thought it was okay. I think more than anything, the Beverly Hills Cop movies are really more based on Eddie Murphy's charisma and his comedic timing. I think Eddie was too big when he made part two, and I think it kind of, to me, I just think he was okay in the second one. He just didn't. It didn't feel to me like Eddie, at least to me as a viewer watching it, it didn't feel like Eddie was working as hard in the second one as he was in the first. The first one, you could really, or even 48 Hours too, you could feel Eddie's hunger. You could feel like this dude was really trying to deliver for the audience, and he really wanted it. I didn't quite feel that in the second one. To me, I just felt the second one was just a bunch of money thrown at the screen and give us more gunfights and push for what the producers thought they wanted from Eddie Murphy at that time, which is what, at least for what I can remember, is we just love Eddie's improvisational comedic timing. I think Cop 2 pushed more towards kind of the Eddie Murphy raw kind of profane side, in which case he's profane in Cop 1, but I think Cop 1 has more comedic beats that involve just Eddie's improvisational skills, and his cursing just came out of that. But in Cop 2, I felt the comedy was based on Eddie's kind of more edgier and obnoxious cursing type of comedy. I kind of felt, that's what I felt from watching it. So that's why I'm not as big a fan of Cop 2. But it's okay. It's oh Lord, and we get into this one. Anybody who's ever seen Beverly Hills Cop 3 knows that from top to bottom, that is a piece of garbage, filth, trash. Beverly Hills Cop 3 is horrific on every single level. It's horrific because anybody who was a fan of Eddie Murphy at that time and knew Eddie Murphy through the 80s, everybody knew that Eddie Murphy was going through a career slide when he made Cop 3. And Cop 3 just sucked. It was very generic. It's generic and by the numbers. John Landis directed it, who did Trading Places. I don't know what happened with that thing, man. I don't know. It's cheesy. It takes place in a theme park. You got wannabe Disney characters. Eddie Murphy, Axel Foley is dressed up as an elephant, and he's pushing kids in pools, and he's rescuing kids on amusement park rides, and he rappels down from an amusement park ride with his bare hands. You know what I mean? Obviously, he wouldn't have rope burn from having two kids on his back and sliding on a rope like 50 feet. I mean, it's horrific. It's almost like a stale remake of the original film. Because in this one, in the original film, Eddie's best buddy, I can't remember, what was his name? I don't remember what his buddy's name was in the first movie, even though I watched it a couple days ago. But his buddy got murdered, and then he went to Beverly Hills. This one, the Inspector Todd, the very kind of, stern, cursing captain in those films, he gets murdered in Cop 3. And the guy who murdered him is like some kind of counterfeiter who runs security at the theme park. The whole thing is dumb. I hated it. There's a couple comedic gags in it, and I do say a couple, meaning very, very few, that are okay. They try to throw in a love interest for Eddie, and Teresa Randall, great actress, was in Sugar Hill, Bad Boys, King of New York with Christopher Walken, and a cameo, I think. Bunch of other stuff. It's just horrible. It sucked. It bombed when it came out, because I remember they cut together a pretty good trailer for it. I remember, because I was in 6th grade. I was 12 years old. And that was a big summer for movies. There was True Lies, Speed, I think The Flintstones, The Crow with Brandon Lee had come out early, I think around spring of that year. There was a lot of big movies that summer, and when Cop 3 came out, it was just like nobody cared. And the reason nobody cared was because it just wasn't there. Eddie was sleepwalking. Everybody, and John Landis was probably sleepwalking too. Either that, or he had his hands tied dealing with Eddie Murphy complaining about how his career wasn't it was on a downslide, So I think because of how awful, although I'm not a fan of Cop 2 either, I don't think Cop 2 damaged the original. I just don't think it was anywhere. I think they kind of blew up aspects of the first Cop that I don't think were as important. Which I think more important was Eddie's improvisational comedic skills, and I think they blew up more of what Eddie Murphy became rather than what the root of his talent was in Cop 2. And Cop 3 was just more of a career desperate attempt for Eddie Murphy to get back on top, which we all know he didn't get back on top till 2 years later when he made Nutty Professor remake the first one, which is a fantastic film, because Eddie went back to his real comedic skills in that one. So I think the time will be perfect for Beverly Hills Cop 4 remake. I can't say I have. I saw Eddie Murphy like last month when he was on the Arsenio Hall show, because we all know the Arsenio Hall show came back. Everybody remembers how much that was the bomb back in the day. And we remember how when him and Arsenio was together, it was like gold, whether it being Coming to America and Harlem Nights for that brief moment, or whether it was on Arsenio's original show. When Eddie Murphy came back on Arsenio's newest show recently, Eddie was and I get it, Eddie's like in his 50s now. You know, when Eddie did the cop movies, he was in his 20s and his 30s. You know, so he was a young guy full of energy. I get that. Eddie still kind of has it. You know, he had a couple things that he said to Arsenio. He riffed on Arsenio about how Arsenio used to be a magician, and he said something like, "Oh, you can sit your woman down and pull out your wand and pull out this," and he looked at Arsenio and was like, "What is that, a rose?" and pulled it and went from behind Arsenio's ear. And that was pretty funny. You know, so I think if they're gonna bring this franchise back, they're gonna have to go to the strongest thing is gonna be Eddie's improvisational skills. You know what I mean? Like when I saw Eddie do that on this newest Arsenio Hall show, when he just looked at Arsenio and said, "What is that, a rose behind your ear?" It just shows Eddie can make anything funny. And I think that would be the key. The key is not to make more excessive F words and curse words. That's a part of it. You know what I mean? Because that gives it that 80s raw edge comedy feel, but really more is to let Eddie improvise and kind of use comedic shtick and improvisational to get his way through certain situations. That was cool about Axel Foley. Axel Foley would kind of, you know, use comedy to get through situations. He tries to get into the restaurant to get to the guy who killed his friend, and he goes, "My name is Ramon," and he pretends to be a homosexual. You know, he gets into the hotel and he goes, "Well, you guys don't want niggers in here." You know, that's what he does. He pretends to be drunk when they're robbing the strip club. You know, and I think that's the strength of when Eddie plays that character. And I think if they kind of expand on that in this new one and let Eddie just improvise and do his thing, and then you bring in the action element and the beautiful cinematography and a story that's, it doesn't have to be brilliant. We know it doesn't have to be brilliant, but just something that will bring a purpose for Axel Foley to come back. I think you'll be okay. I read that Brett Ratner is going to be directing it, who did the Rush Hour movies, and he did Money Talks, and he did The Family Man. I like that movie, The Family Man. And he did Tower Heist, which had Eddie Murphy in it. I'm not a fan of Tower Heist. I didn't care for it. I thought Eddie was kind of funny in it. I think it'll work better if they just let Eddie, because it's part of Eddie's family. You know what I mean? His brother Charlie is like that too. They have a natural kind of just comedic thing that they can do. And I think if they let Eddie do that, like if I don't know, if to say they're filming an interrogation scene or something, and Eddie makes fun of the way the guy's nose looks or something like that, that would be something that wouldn't be written in a script. That would be something that Eddie Murphy would just do. And I think if they play on that, then they lay in the hardcore action, I think they'll be okay. And I think this time the production might be a little bit tighter because Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simmons didn't produce number 3. I don't know who produced number 3, but it wasn't them. And I think that represents the drop in the quality and why that production was, although it was it had a lot of money on that film, but that's probably why it explains why it sucks so bad. Because if Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson would have been on set, they'd have been like, no, dancing people in suits, Axel Foley in an elephant outfit, no. You know, so I think there's potential there for a greater movie. I think it could be a perfect comeback movie. We saw Stallone do it with Rocky. Rocky Balboa, which is fantastic, and he did it with Rambo, the John Rambo 4, which I think that's okay. I like Rocky Balboa better, but I think we can do it if Eddie goes to his improvisational roots and just riffs, and then Brett Ratner. I think Brett Ratner should just let Eddie do his thing in all the scenes, and it'll be cool. And then Brett Ratner can just let not Don Simpson, I'm sorry, he's dead, but Jerry Bruckheimer come in and say, we need this amount of car chases, this amount of explosions, this is your cinematographer, this person who wrote this movie is going to write the script. If they lay all that out, lay out all the action stuff. That's what I think. Brett Ratner and Jerry Bruckheimer focus on the action. Focus on the action, lay that out, and let Eddie handle all the comedy. And I think you've got a good ending to the cop feature, because for me, I have no desire in a Beverly Hills Cop 5. I just like a proper ending to the character, because number 3 was Drek, pure Drek, you know, and I'm gonna kind of end off this video with 2 last things. Is I want to say that to me, my most favorite Eddie Murphy movie of all time is, and a lot of people disagree with me on this one, it's always been The Golden Child. The Golden Child, I think, is a hidden gem. A couple years ago, I showed it to my nephew, and my nephew, at the time, my nephew was like 7, you know, so he didn't grow up in the 80s. I showed it to him, and my nephew laughed hysterically. He just died, and that was how I reacted. I think the strength of that movie is also what I was going back to about what they should do in Cop 4 and Eddie Murphy's comedic skills, is that Eddie Murphy really, and in that film, what I love about The Golden Child is, yes, he cusses a little bit in that, but it's really Eddie Murphy's kindness as a person and his warmth is what carries that picture. You know what I mean? Eddie has some great comedic lines in The Golden Child. I think there's one scene where the girl is saying something about, and by the way, that's a dark film. There's some dark stuff in that film, looking at it as an adult now versus when I was a kid. But there's a scene where some girl was murdered to give blood to the Golden Child, and Eddie Murphy is like, he's like a guy who looks for kids and stuff, and he looks at the girl who's from Tibet, and she's like, we must find the Golden Child, da 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 da. And Eddie Murphy goes, well, are they in this world, or do we have to project there, some part of the galaxy? You know, that's the kind of stuff that you know was not written in the script. And those are my favorite moments of that film, when Eddie just kind of just plays, kind of winks at the audience and goes, this is completely absurd. You know, this is absurd. How can anybody take this seriously? But the other people are playing the supernatural situation seriously. There's another scene where I think the guy tries to kill Eddie Murphy in the railroad. Eddie Murphy comes in and says, you know, tell me where Tommy Tong is, or I'm going to bust your ass. And he goes, oh, you don't speak English? I'm looking for Tommy Tong. And he goes like that. It is so funny, man. And then the guy comes out and tries to kill him, and the girl like saves Eddie Murphy's life and does a backflip. And then Eddie Murphy goes, what was that with the flip? That's the kind of stuff that makes Eddie Murphy great. So that's my 2 cents on my favorite Eddie Murphy movie in his prime. I know a lot of viewers who are watching who are like me from the black community. You know, they will all probably say Harlem Nights are Coming to America, but I'm sorry, I disagree. For me, it's The Golden Child. That's gonna be it for the video. I tried not to stretch it too long. I probably did, because I'm passionate about this kind of thing. Another thing I'm going to have in my videos is at the end of each video, I'm going to start talking about just random things that don't have anything to do with movies. Today's random things that I'm going to talk about is, does anybody hate it when they go to Chipotle and you say double meat and they give you like 4 pieces of meat, and they give you like half a tablespoon of rice, and then they give you a hell of a load of lettuce and a handful of cheese, and then you get to the register and they go, oh yeah, it's $9.35. That so pisses me off to high hell. I should stop eating at Chipotle. But that's the random complaint for today. Okay, that's me talking about my thoughts on Eddie Murphy and Beverly Hills Cop 4. Okay, if you guys like the video, which you don't like, please don't be too brutal. But you know, if you can, subscribe to my channel. There's gonna be more reviews to come. I'm gonna put some more stuff up tonight, and it should be up sometime later in the week. Okay, so that's RMJ Movie Reviews Incorporated talking about Beverly Hills Cop 4. Peace.